Dirtle Magic! Hello and welcome back. You can follow our post on Twitter and Facebook at DirtleMTG to stay up to date on our latest videos and other posts, and you can join a more robust discussion about Casual Commander at our blog, thedicebag.blog. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content to help the channel and the blog grow. Another way you can support the channel, though, is through our affiliate links in the description below. If you're looking for single sealed product or gaming accessories to protect all of that glory, please consider clicking the links in the description. Now, grab some spells, it's time to dirtle. Greetings. Today I'm going to duel with Killian the Ink Duelist as my sponsored favorite. Meeting us on the field of competition are Uril, the not quite magic version of Negan, and Nicol the Ravager. Negan wins the die roll and drops a Fetid Heath into play. They then cast a Skull Clamp and pass. Bolas puts down a Snow Island. I get an Isolated Chapel for my turn and drop a Plains. Uril drops a Wooded Bastion. Battlefield Forge hits the field for Negan. They then cast Lucille, and I cringe only slightly. Bolas drops a Mountain, and they cast Dimir Signet. Godless Shrine comes to my hand. I drop a land, and then cast my commander, Killian Ink Duelist. Wooded Footfalls comes into play for Uril, and it gets felled for a plateau. Core Spirit Dancer enters for that player, and they pass. Negan's turn has a mountain into play. Sensei's Divining Top is then cast, followed by a Goblin Bombardment. Speaking of, the top is on the list for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, just an FYI. Bolas' turn has them casting their commander after a Tainted Isle drops into play. I discard a swamp to its effect. General's Enforcer marches into my hand. I play a Godless Shrine untapped, and then cast the Enforcer, leery of Negan's sacrifice shenanigans. I go to combat, swinging into the Negan player, and they take 2, and I gain 2. Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, enters for the Uril player, and you always have to say it like this. All That Glitters is cast, triggering the Spirit Dancer for some card draw, and enchants that creature when it enters. Over to Low Blood Temperature, and another mountain comes into play. Viscera Seer is cast, and then top is activated to look at the top 3. Back to Bolas. They go straight to attacks and swing into the Negan player. They take 4, going down to 32. In the second main, Hostage Taker is then cast. When it enters, it exiles the Viscera Seer. I receive the Gift of Doom on my turn. I drop a command tower, and then cast my own Core Spirit Dancer. Moving to combat, I swing Killian into the Negan player again, dealing 2 more commander damage and gaining 2 life. To the Mist Stalker, and they cast Daybreak Coronet, gaining another card, and enchanting the Spirit Dancer. Frozen Verge comes into play, and they move to combat. I was hoping they'd swing at the Negan player because of the Edict effects that suck for Tron-style decks, but alas, they swing at me. I thought we'd be Tron buddies. I respond with Swords to Plowshares, and it gets exiled. Negan's turn begins with an Anointed Procession, and also ends with it. Bolas casts the Seer from exile, and moves to combat. Their commander swings into the Negan player, dealing 4 more commander damage from their commander, and bringing them up to 8 and down to 25. Back to me, and I gain a command beacon. I drop it, and cast Gift of Doom onto the Core Spirit Dancer to protect my card draw. I also draw a new card, it being the Caves of Koilos. I then cast Faith Unbroken, gaining a Sphere of Safety. When Faith enters, I exile the Seer, not wanting to get more ETBs out of the other creatures. Hostage Taker and Seer are sacrificed in response. Moving to combat, I swing the Enforcer at Bolas and Killian into Negan. Damage is good, with Bolas going down to 38 and Negan to 21. Smothering Tithe comes into play for the Uril player, followed by a Sacred Foundry into play tapped. They pass. To Negan, and the Tithe triggers for the first time, gaining your old player a Treasure. A Plains drops into play. Negan is then cast, and I'm surprised that they target the Bolas player. Nicol Bolas is sacrificed, and a treasure is created. Top is activated to look at the top 3, and that Skull Clamp is equipped to the Negan. Over to the Ravager, a Snow Swamp enters, and they cast Mirrorhole Mimic. It comes into play as a copy of Negan, and that player of the original one is targeted. The original dies, triggering Skull Clamp, which triggers the Tithe. The Bolas player gains a treasure, and they pass. My turn brings the Night Howler to hand. I cast Spear of Safety for some defense, and go to combat. I send the Spirit Dancer into the Bolas player, and Killian into the Negan player. Damage is good, and Bolas goes down to 36, and Negan goes up to 12 commander from my commander, and down to 17. Temple Garden grows into play for the Uril player. Ink Duelist is then cast, is then sacrificed, and the mana is spent for the summoning of Uril the Miststalker. Crow's Verge gets cracked, and Stomping Grounds and Savannah come into play. Sun Titan comes over the horizon, and with its trigger, Ancestral Mask is returned to the battlefield to enchant Uril. They pass, with their commander being a 19/19. Negan's turn brings the plains down to the table. Liliana Death's Majesty is cast, and once on the field, 2 zombie tokens are created. Prying Blade is then cast, and they pass. A Snow Island enters into play for the Bolas player, followed by the dreaded Consecrated Sphinx. They pass, and the value train begins. Back to me, and I draw plains. I play a Fetid Heath, and cast the Night Howler as an aura using Bestow. Spirit Dancer brings me a Sword of Fire and Ice, and the Tithe triggers for some more, and Night Howler enchants Killian. I move to attacks, and swing into Liliana with Killian. The Negan player blocks with both zombies, and they go down in combat, and I gain 7 life. Uril's turn begins with a healthy 10 treasure on the field. Rogue's Passage hits the field, and I fear for my face's safety, but hope they swing into one of the other players. They move to combat, swinging the Titan into Liliana, and the Miststalker into me, paying 4 mana to do so because of the Sphere of Safety. With the Titan trigger, they return the Daybreak Coronet to enchant Uril. Rogue's Passage was thankfully used to pay for the Sphere's ability, enabling me to block, and I do so with the Death Touch relevant Core Spirit Dancer. Liliana and Uril go down to the damage, but the Uril player does gain 28 life. Negan's turn has them cast Unexpected Windfall, discarding a card, drawing 2, and gaining 2 treasure tokens. The Sphinx and the Tithe trigger a few more times. They activate the top and look at the top 3 cards of the deck. It is then activated to draw the top card. Disciple of the Vault comes into play, followed by Captain Lannery Storm. The Disciple is triggered twice thanks to treasure being sacrificed, and the Bolas player loses 2 life. Moving on to Bolas, a command tower enters the battlefield. They pass the turn, having to discard 10 cards because the Sphinx has been doing some work. Based on what they discarded and the mana they have, I assume a Cyclonic Rift is incoming at some point. My turn delivers a swamp, and I drop the Caves of Koilos. I then cast the Sword of Fire and Ice, looking to gain some extra card draw. I equip it to Killian, and move to combat. I swing my commander into the Uril player, and bring them closer to Commander Death, and they are unable to block because of the Menace. 14 damage is good, and I gain 14 life, and the sword triggers. I try to burn away Lannery Storm, but they get sacrificed to the Bombardment, which deals 1 damage to the Bolas player. Fake Negan also triggers for a treasure. Unfortunately, when the sword trigger goes to resolve, it's negated. Sadness. Back to the Uril player, and they play Kessig Wolf Run. They recast their commander, and the Disciple triggers because they use treasure for the mana to summon it. The Bolas player loses 1 life. In combat, the Sun Titan brings back all that glitters, but is stopped dead by Cyclonic Rift on Overload. I assume the Titan was attacking the Bolas player. The board gets bounced away. Negan's turn comes back around, and they recast Disciple of the Vault. Anointed Procession is also recast. Skullclamp follows that to the field, but soon after, the Negan player decides to quit the game. Bolas' turn has an Underground Sea enter play. They move to combat, and swing both Fake Negan and the Sphinx into the Uril player. Damage is good, and the Uril player goes down to 52 from 60. In the second main, Bolas casts the Scarab God. Moving to me, I gain a Harvest Guard Alceds? Well, don't know how to pronounce that. I play a Swamp, and recast Killian. I follow that with a Spirit Dancer, and then cast Faith Unbroken. I draw a Path to Exile, and when Faith enters, I exile the Sphinx under it. I then cast a newly gotten Path to exile the Scarab God, and it goes away. Over to Uril, and their commander re-emerges from the mist. Swirling Tithe is then recast, but gets the mana drained from it. 2 Bolas, and they gain 4 mana from the mana drain on their first main. They cast Arcane Signet with some of the mana, and then use the rest in a blue to cast Rhystic Study. 2 combat, and Fake Negan swings into the Uril player. They don't block, and they take 4. In the second main, Liliana Dreadhorde General comes down, and this is promptly activated to have each player sacrifice 2 creatures, and I leave Killian in the graveyard. Fake Negan triggers 3 times, and Liliana draws the Bolas player a card. That player then casts Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. It's activated to destroy the Rogue's Passage, and they pass the turn. On my turn, I get a Swamp. I play a Plains, and cast a Harvest whatever their name is, and the Bolas player draws a card. I cast Gift of Doom, and the Bolas player gets another card. Gift enchants the Alcides, or whatever they are, and I pass. Taiga comes into play for the Uril player, but then they quit the game. That doesn't bode well for my existence. The Bolas player wastes no time, and uses the Bolas Planeswalker to blow up my command tower. The Locust God enters the battlefield, and things begin looking very dire. Toxic Deluge then hits the stack, where X equals 3, and my Harvest, whatever it is, dies. Liliana makes a zombie token, and then Bojuka Bog hits the field, exiling my graveyard. When this happens, I move Killian back to the command zone. 2 combat, and the Sphinx hits me for 1, and I go down to 70. My turn brings me a Hateful Eidolon, and because of the Sphinx, the Locust God triggers for the first time, and makes 2 insect tokens. I play a Swamp, and then sacrifice my command beacon to bring Killian to my hand. I cast my commander, and the Bolas player gets to draw a card and make another insect. I then cast Hateful Eidolon, and the Bolas player again gains a card and a token. I follow this with a Sphere of Safety, trying to hold off the flying horde being assembled, and I pass the turn. Bolas' turn begins with the creation of a new insect. A Swamp comes into play, and they activate the ultimate ability on Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. I have to discard 7 cards and sacrifice 7 permanents. They then cast Nicol Bolas Dragon God and activate it to blow up my isolated chapel. At 3 lands and no real way to recover from this kind of devastation, I surrender the game. Good game to my opponents. The deck focuses a lot more on a Tron style of build, although we can shift that to other creatures. Taking out the Negan player was a priority for us because Edict effects are usually very strong against a Tron deck. Unfortunately, it couldn't be done fast enough, and the Bolas player was able to gain a large advantage simply by waiting through the game, which is something I had dreaded happening. In Tron, you just can't attack everyone at the same time, which is one of its weaknesses. Join me next time for some more casual Commander gameplay here on Dirtle Magic. Until then, stay safe out there.